Good afternoon. Today we are going to see about optic neuritis. So what is optic neuritis? Optic neuritis is nothing but inflammation of the optic nerve. It is of three main types. One is papillitis, neuroretinitis or retrobulbar neuritis if it affects the optic nerve head. Optic nerve head is that portion of the optic nerve which you will be able to see when you do an ophthalmoscopic examination or fundus examination. So if there are changes which are going to affect your optic disc or optic nerve head, then it is called as papillitis. If you are going to see associated in addition to the papillitis or the disc edema, if you are going to see additional hard exudates in the region of the retina, then it is called as neuroretinitis. And if it is going to affect only the nerve which is proximal to the disc, that is, there are no fundus changes that you can make out when you do an ophthalmoscopic examination, even though the other signs and symptoms are going to be there, then it is called as retrobulbar neuritis. So the main types are papillitis, neuroretinitis and retrobulbar neuritis. In both papillitis and neuroretinitis, you are going to see fundus changes. That is, optic disc changes will be there when you do an ophthalmoscopic examination. Whereas in retrobulbar neuritis, other signs and symptoms of optic neuritis will be there, but there will not be any disc changes which will be visible when you do a fundus examination or an ophthalmoscopic examination. So retrobulbar neuritis is more common in adults, whereas papillitis will be more common in your pediatric population. So coming to the etiology, what is the etiology? It could be idiopathic or it could be because of a demyelinating disease. There are various causes, but when you come across the first episode of optic neuritis, or if there is an atypical presentation as well, you have to do a MRI of the brain and orbit, especially with the gadolinium enhancement that is preferred to pick up a demyelinating disorder like multiple sclerosis or neuromyelitis optica, otherwise known as Devick's disease. It's very important to rule out multiple sclerosis in a patient presenting with optic neuritis, because it may be the first manifestation of multiple sclerosis which may even present several years later. So it's very important to rule out a demyelinating disorder in a patient with optic neuritis in order to rule out multiple sclerosis or neuromyelitis optica. So in addition to this, there may be other infections which may affect the optic nerve head, like it could be local infections like endophthalmitis, adjacent sinusitis, especially ethmoid sinusitis in children, orbital cellulitis, or it could be because of systemic infections like such as viral infections like mumps, measles, herpes zoster virus or varicella zoster virus. In addition to that, several bacterial infections can also affect your optic nerve head. It could be tuberculosis, syphilis, cat scratch disease, Lyme disease. All these things could cause optic neuritis. Fungal infections like cryptococcosis or histoplasmosis, or protozoal infections like toxoplasmosis, toxocariasis, and the parasitic infections like your cysticercosis can also cause optic neuritis. In addition to that, optic nerve can also get involved in immune mediated disorders such as uveitis or sympathetic ophthalmitis. Metabolic diseases, though very rare, can also cause optic neuritis such as diabetes mellitus or anemia. So coming to the clinical features. So common age group is 18 to 45 years of age group, and they usually present with it. So remember that optic neuritis is a disease of a younger individual. It's common in the 18 to 45 years age group. They will present with a sudden decrease in vision, which may be associated with orbital pain. Orbital pain is seen especially with your superior and medial movements. That is because a few fibers of the superior rectus and medial rectus will have an attachment to your optic nerve sheath. So when the optic nerve is inflamed, then this fibers are also tend to get inflamed, and that is why you have pain with your superior and medial movements. It is present in almost 92% of the cases. And there will be tenderness on digital pressure, and there will be reduced perception of your light intensity. In addition to that, your color vision can be altered. There will be red desaturation, which is called as a decrease in the red perception. Red color perception will be dull, will be decreased, or you will not be able to make out the red color very well. So these are all the important clinical features. I mean, these are main symptoms in a patient. If a patient in 18 to 45 years age group is presenting with a sudden decrease in vision, associated orbital pain, especially a superior medial movements associated with red desaturation, and the reduced perception in your light intensity, then they'll not be able to feel the intensity of light the usual way the normal person would feel. So all these things should make you think in terms of an optic neuritis. Now moving on to the signs. So what are the signs? The initial sign will be your decrease in visual acuity. Decrease in visual acuity will be very drastic. There will be sudden decrease in visual acuity. Impaired color vision, that is your red desaturation. Red color will not be appreciated that very well. And then you will have what is called as a relative afferent pupillary defect or a Marcus gun pupil. And this is picked up by what is called as a swinging flashlight test. When you swing the flashlight in front of the eye to elicit a pupillary reflex with the eyes gazing at a distance, and you swing it alternately between the two eyes, giving around 3 seconds for each eye, you will be able to find out that one eye is dilating or one eye pupil is not reacting well, does not have a sustained contraction compared to the other pupil, and that way you can pick up a relative afferent pupillary defect or a Marcus gun pupil, which is a very hallmark of a patient with optic neuritis. And there are 4 grades in the relative afferent pupillary defect depending on how much the nerve is affected. And then coming to the visual, in addition to that, you have also got 2 phenomena. One is a full-fledged phenomena, which is nothing but altered perception of your moving objects will be there. And another thing is your Wutthoff sign, where there's a worsening of the symptoms in addition whenever the person exercises, or there's an increase in body temperature. So there's a worsening with increase and worsening with exercise or increase in body temperature. So coming to the visual fields, if you do a visual field examination in this patient, you can have a central or a centrocecal scotoma. Central scotoma or a centrocecal scotoma can be present whenever the central area is connected with the physiological blind spot. Then you get a centrocecal scotoma. So this is a normal optic disc. You can see the margins are all well defined, and you can see the margins well defined, and the cupping is well made out. It's around a 0.3 to 0.4 cupping is there. All the vessels are all well made out. This is a normal disc. And what will be the fundus changes in a patient with papillitis? In papillitis, the disc will tend to be hyperemic. There will be more reddish appearance because of the increase in the number of capillaries on the surface. There will be hyperemic. It will be edematous. There will be an elevation of the disc, edematous disc. But even though it is edematous, it will hardly exceed 2 to 3 diopters of edema. And the margins will tend to be blurred, and there will be a lot of peripapillary hemorrhages, and cottonwool spots can be there. And vitreous cells is a very important finding, that the adjacent vitreous also will tend to get inflamed, and you will have a lot of vitreous cells as well. And in neuroretinitis, in addition to the papillitis, in addition to all the features of papillitis, you will have retinal exudates in the macular region. So that is called as neuroretinitis. And neuroretinitis usually because myelination stops does not involve the retina. In neuroretinitis, you will not get a neuroretinitis picture in multiple sclerosis. So this is a hyperemic edematous optic disc. You can see that the optic disc is inflamed and swollen. It's hyperemic. You are not able to make out the margins at all, and it is edematous, and there is a tortuosity of the vessels around with, this is a sign of optic neuritis. So this is neuritis. In addition to the optic disc edema, where you have blurring of the disc margins and edema, you have exudates in the macular region, which is called typical of your neuroretinitis. So what is the complication associated with the papillitis? You can disc and later stages will go for secondary optic atrophy, or otherwise called as post-neurotic optic atrophy. And coming to the differential diagnosis, the differential diagnosis will be papilledema. Remember, papilledema will be usually be bilateral, and it will not be associated with sudden decrease in vision. It will be covered in the later topics. And the second differential diagnosis will be ischemic optic neuropathy, or in a grade 4 hypertensive retinopathy, again you will have papilledema, or it could be any of your toxic or metabolic neuropathies, as well as any compressive lesion of the orbit or brain are going to give rise to a disc edema like picture. So this is the differential diagnosis. It could be papilledema, ischemic optic neuropathy, grade 4 hypertensive retinopathy, toxic or metabolic neuropathies, and any compressive lesion which involves the orbit or your brain. So this is papilledema, and so the disc could be hyperemic. This is early papilledema where you have the disc hyperemia of the disc and elevation of the disc, and this is established papilledema where you have cottonal spots, superficial hemorrhages, and blurring of the disc margins. So papilledema resembles optic neuritis. Of course, the signs and symptoms will be slightly different. So what are the investigations you will do in a patient who comes with a sudden decrease in vision if you are suspecting an optic neuritis? First one is you look at the pupillary reaction. It is very important to pick up a relative afferent pupillary defect. Sometimes it may be the only sign. Supposing you're not having any fundus changes, a relative afferent pupillary defect may be the only sign you might be able to pick up. Of course, and associated with the decreased visual acuity. Color vision, I told you that red desaturation, the red color will be defective. In addition to that, when you examine the patient, you can see vitreous cells which can be picked up with the slit lamp. A fundus examination may or may not show any the optic disc nerve head changes. When you do visual evoke potential for this patient, there will be a prolonged latency of your P wave. So that will help you pick up that, and this patient could be a case of an optic neuritis. MRI is always indicated whenever it's a first episode or in an atypical optic neuritis, because multiple sclerosis is one of the important causes for your optic neuritis. And like I said, it could be the first manifestation of your multiple sclerosis as well. So you look at the pupillary reaction, you record the visual acuity, then record the color vision, find that red desaturation is there, which is cells are picked up on the slit lamp. Fundus examination reveals an edema of the optic nerve head. Visual evoke potential reveals the prolonged latency of your P wave, and MRI may or may not pick up your demyelinating plaques, which could be seen in the your multiple sclerosis, demyelinating plaques. What is atypical optic neuritis? If it is out of the typical age range, say it's beyond less than 18 years or more than 45 years, and there is no pain associated with eye movements, if there is a poor vision which is persisting for more than 2 weeks, normally your optic neuritis will have the vision will start improving by the time it reaches 2 weeks of it reaches a period of 2 weeks. So if there is a progressive diminution of vision beyond the first week, or the vision is not improving persistently, not improving, or the poor vision is persistent even at 2 weeks, you will need to do further investigations, because this is what is called as an atypical optic neuritis. And atypical optic neuritis, there could be multiple other causes for optic neuritis. So you have to do a complete blood count, you have to do an ESR, you have to do a C-reactive protein, rapid plasma reagent, and fluorescent reprimible antibody absorption test, anti-nuclear antibodies in addition to an MRI. All these things are needed whenever you're dealing with a case of an atypical optic neuritis. So if it's out of the typical age range, there is no pain with eye movements, if the poor vision is persisting beyond 2 weeks, if there is a progressive diminution of vision beyond the first week, you need to do further investigations like your complete blood count, ESR, fluorescent reprimible antibody, the absorption test, anti-nuclear antibodies, and magnetic resonance imaging, MRI. All these things are needed to find out the cause for your atypical optic neuritis. So what is the treatment for your optic neuritis? Treatment for your optic neuritis is they did a trial which is called as an optic neuritis treatment trial, in which they gave IV methylprednisolone 1 gram into 3 days. It could be given in divided doses as 250 milligram into 4 every 6th hourly into 3 days as well. So the total dose is 1 gram into 3 days. This is followed by oral prednisolone 1 milligram per kg into 11 days, which can be rapidly tapered over the next 3 days. So optic neuritis treatment trial, you give IV methylprednisolone 1 gram for 3 days, followed by oral prednisolone 1 milligram per kg for 11 days. And if it is an atypical disease, there will be other causes for the optic neuritis. So suppose it could be a protozoal infection, or it could be a parasitic infection, or it could be tuberculosis or syphilis or cat scratch disease, whatever it is. So if it's an atypical optic neuritis and you have been able to find out what is the reason for it, then you have to treat the primary disease. Otherwise, if it's a typical optic neuritis, you will follow the regimen of IV methylprednisolone 1 gram IV into 3 days, followed by oral prednisolone 1 milligram per kg body weight into 11 days. And this prednisolone can be rapidly tapered over 3 days. We never start with oral prednisolone, and whenever you see the patient, whenever you pick up a case of optic neuritis, oral prednisolone alone is not started directly because that is associated with the higher recurrence rate compared to IV methylprednisolone. So it's always a IV methylprednisolone 1 gram for 3 days in cases with typical optic neuritis, followed by oral prednisolone 1 milligram per kg body weight for 11 days. And if it is an atypical presentation, you have to treat the primary disease, and then only you will move forward. So now we are moving on to ischemic optic neuropathy. What is ischemic optic neuropathy? So you have basically two types of ischemic optic neuropathy: anterior ischemic optic neuropathy and posterior ischemic optic neuropathy. Here also it has the same similar features. In anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, you have fundus changes which can be picked up when you do a fundus examination or an ophthalmoscopic examination. Whereas in posterior ischemic optic neuropathy, again you don't have any fundus changes, but only the other signs and symptoms will be present of an ischemic optic neuropathy. So coming to anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, the thing which differentiates an optic neuritis from an ischemic optic neuropathy is ischemic optic neuropathy is usually common beyond 40 years of age group. More common around 60 years, 50 to 60 years of age group, not under the younger age group. Whereas optic neuritis is predominantly a disease of a younger individual, 18 to 45 years is the typical range. Here this is always going to come beyond 40 years. So coming to anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, you have two types: arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy and non-arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy. So what are the clinical features? It is common beyond 40 years. There is a painless sudden decrease in vision. Thus a reduced color vision. Remember, whenever the optic nerve is affected, there is always a decrease in the red perception. Red color perception is there. It's called as red desaturation. Amaurosis is uncommon. So transient visual loss for previous episodes are usually uncommon, and it is usually unilateral and rarely bilateral. So though it can, from unilateral, it can progress to a bilateral involvement now. And coming to the field defects, when you do an investigation, there you have central or centrocecal scotomas. You have what is called as an altitudinal field defect, where the superior half or the inferior half can be affected. So that is called as an altitudinal field defect. Of course, I'll be showing you the pictures of that. And here you can have edema, and if it is an arthritic one, you have more pallor of the optic disc, and if it is a non-arthritic one, you will have more of a hyperemic optic disc. In addition to that, you will have flame-shaped hemorrhages and cottonelle spots as well. So these are the clinical features of an ischemic optic neuropathy. Ischemic optic neuropathy is predominantly a disease of the older age group. So these are pictures of your non-arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, where you can see the disc margins totally blurred and the tortuous vessels are there. Here you can see the hemorrhages emanating from the disc, and as it progresses, by the time it reaches 2 months onwards, you can see the optic atrophy setting. Okay. So this is the progression of your optic nerve changes in a patient with a non-arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy to optic atrophy. What is the etiopathogenesis? There is an interference with the blood supply. Remember, the posterior ciliary arteries are going to supply your optic nerve, and because of the blood supply to the posterior ciliary arteries are affected, blood supply in the posterior ciliary arteries are affected. There is an involvement of the anterior portion of the optic nerve, resulting in a posterior laminar or post-laminar infarct. And in giant cell arteritis, which is one of the important causes for your arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, you have a granulomatous inflammation of your small and medium vessels with infiltration of your plasma cells and macrophages and associated lymphocytes as well, associated with your and you can see the multinucleated giant cells presence as well when you do a biopsy of the temporal artery. So there is an interference with the blood supply of your posterior ciliary artery, which tends to involve your anterior portion of the optic nerve, leading to a post-laminar infarct, which is responsible for the ischemic optic neuropathy picture. So coming to anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, what are the distinguishing features between arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy and non-arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy? Arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, females are more affected than males, whereas in non-arthritic it is nearly the same. And arthritic ischemic optic neuropathy has a tendency to involve greater than 60 years, whereas 40 to 60 years are more commonly involved in a non-arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy. Arthritic has a severe visual loss, whereas in non-arthritic it's a moderate visual loss. Fellow eye tends to get involved in 95% of the cases within a few days to weeks in a patient with arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, whereas the fellow eye will tend to get involved in less than 30% of the cases, and that is over months to years in a patient with non-arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy. Pallid disc edema is a hallmark in arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, whereas in hyperemic disc edema is more commonly seen in a non-arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy. ESR will have a high rise greater than 40 millimeters per hour will be there, whereas a non-arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, the ESR is usually in the that is ESR is nothing but your erythrocyte sedimentation rate, which is usually in the age group in the range of 20 to 40 millimeters. In addition to that, a C-reactive protein also will be elevated in arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, and so if you do a ESR and a CRP together, you can pick up, it has got around 97% sensitivity of picking up the arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy. So treatment is, arthritic is predominantly a granulomatous inflammation, so treatment is corticosteroids. Whereas non-arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, you don't have much success with treating the disease. And the treatment, they have tried out a levodopa carbidopa combination, which is showing some promising results. Though basically the treatment for non-arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy is not, there's not much progress on that front. Whereas your arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy will definitely respond very well to corticosteroids. So this is a picture of an arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy. You can see the pallid disc edema. The disc is pale, the margins are blurred, and the disc is elevated. You can, in addition to that, you can appreciate the tortuosity of the vessels all around. So, important cause for arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy is your giant cell arteritis. Giant cell arteritis is nothing but a granulomatous inflammation which tends to involve your small and medium sized vessels, and it will be characterized by severe headaches will be there, severe headaches, scalp tenderness will be there, jaw claudication can be there, and your temporal artery will be non-pulsatile, and I mean your temporal artery will be tortuous, and you'll be able to be this sort of rigid kind of thing. You will be able to palpate the temporal artery and other things. So you do a temporal artery biopsy, you can pick up a giant cell arteritis. And whereas your non-arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, it could be due to diabetes mellitus, hypertension, or shock. Any systemic shock which predisposes to hypotension or nocturnal hypotension could predispose the patient to develop a non-arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy. In addition to the non-arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy tends to occur in discs which have got small cups. So this, they are more prone to develop a non-arthritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy. So this is the inferior altitudinal field defect. So when you do a field for a patient with the ischemic optic neuropathy, you can see that the inferior half of the the inferior portion of the field is involved. This is because the superior portion of the disc tends to be involved more commonly, so it will usually present with an inferior altitudinal field defect. Of course, you can get a superior altitudinal field defect as well. So what is posterior ischemic optic neuropathy? When here the site of involvement is posterior, and the small pile vessels are involved, and the intraorbital portion of the optic nerve is going to be affected more. So the etiology could be your systemic lupus erythematosus, giant cell arteritis, acute hypertension, or shock. There is usually a sudden visual loss. Relative afferent pupillary defect will be there, but as I told you earlier, there will be no fundus changes, similar to your retrobulbar neuritis. So posterior ischemic optic neuropathy, here the site of involvement is usually a small pile vessels which is going to supply your intraorbital portion of your optic nerve. The etiology could be systemic lupus erythematosus, giant cell arteritis, acute hypotension, or shock. It usually presents a sudden visual loss and a relative afferent pupillary defect, but no fundus changes will be seen. Thank you. So that's about optic neuritis and ischemic optic neuropathy. Remember, optic neuritis is a disease of a younger individual. It has got a better prognosis, of course, if it's not associated with multiple sclerosis. And ischemic optic neuropathy is a problem which affects the older individuals. and the manifestations, I mean the disc changes will be nearly the same, but the visual prognosis of course is different in both whereas in optic neuritis the visual recovery will start occurring by the end of the first week to the second week they'll start recovering, and giving steroids is only will hasten the recovery, whereas in your ischemic optic neuropathy your prognosis is rather guarded. Thank you.